Get in on the action this season with Underdog's Pick'em game. Select higher or lower between 2 and 8 players and compete for up to 325 times your entry. Use code DIRECTOR when signing up to receive up to $1,000 in bonus cash and a free pick. Yo to Bolt fam, it's the Director. Chargers fans, I know we're all very ready for the next preseason game. Chargers football in a lot of ways. Feels like it's officially back. We still got stuff going on at training camp too as well, man. The narratives continue to grow. The opportunities continue to be there for players to take. I think there's some players that we saw in the Hall of Fame game that we're starting to see some consistency in training camp as well that could pop on to the 53-man roster. It should be a very interesting one today, man. We're going to catch up on how the Chargers have been looking at training camp as of late, and some of the guys are starting to pop off, including players that Chargers fans have a lot of hopes for, and guys like Tre Harris. Have we seen his first big day? We're going to wait and see. Before we do kick things off, man, shout out to the sponsor, Underdog. Use code DIRECTOR to receive up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Everybody get ready for the NFL season, baby. It is here. I know that there's actually some entries that you can make in the preseason games. Of course, you guys remember that we did a whole bunch of stuff for the Hall of Fame game as well, but you can also get in on week 1 versus the Chiefs. Of course, all other NFL games as well, but I know we're all looking at that Omari and Hampton like, ooh, does he hit that higher on rushing yards or the rushing touchdown? Should be very interesting. Definitely check it out if you guys are interested. It's a great way to support my platform while having some fun along the way. And then also, yeah, get ready to start seeing my picks come up here soon, man. I think it's going to be a good time. Before we do kick off, hit us up with a like and sub if you do enjoy this Chargers content. The small amount of time you guys take to like, sub, and bell notification helps me out a lot. Let's get into it. Lights, camera, action.
Who's got it better than us?
Into the end zone, Charger fans are witnesses to history!
Tre Harris has arrived, hopefully. We're starting to see some life here. I know it's been a little bit of a slow start. Okay, let's go ahead and start with that. Tre Harris drafted in the 2nd round, the Ole Miss product. Coming in with Justin Herbert. Lots of expectations for him to kind of be, the next guy next to Lad McConkey. We've really needed another wide receiver to step up and share some responsibility there. Lad McConkey being a great wide receiver 1. We are officially on the lookout for wide receiver 2. Could it be Tre Harris? Could it even be Keenan Allen, who's been, of course, I'm sure you guys have seen some of the shorts I've been put out, who has worked out with the Chargers this last week, and it sounds like things went well. Honestly, it seems like an 80% chance, at least in my opinion, that he comes back to the Chargers, which would be absolutely awesome. But we're also looking for even more answers at wide receiver, just considering how bad the position was last year. Joe Ortiz has done a really good job at drafting and finding talent to address these issues, and right now it looks like Tre Harris has finally started hitting a stride with the team in practice. Now, again, the slow start, a little bit worrisome. Chargers fans did point out, as did I, the slow start in the Hall of Fame game as well. I don't think we saw a single catch from Tre Harris. A couple opportunities, if I do remember. Maybe not the best throws, but you were hoping to see him get open, flash what he flashed at, Ole Miss, and we start to see that connection with his quarterbacks. Unfortunately, that did not happen, and maybe the late start has something to do with the contract dispute. He wasn't out there with the rest of his teammates for the first few weeks, for the first little while in those first week or so. I don't remember how long the holdout officially was. Not as long as we all thought it would be, luckily, but maybe that had something to do with it. Chargers fans are definitely starting to notice other guys like Keandre Lambert-Smith really pop off. Maybe Tre Harris was put in, the rear window for a lot of us. But, aside from a few plays in practice, we have definitely been waiting for some consistent flash from him. But one thing I do think has definitely pushed the narrative in the direction of Tre Harris finding some maybe lost time, making up for lost time with Justin Herbert, is the fact that Lad McConkey has not been practicing recently. Now, don't worry, it sounds like it's something extremely minor. This team, based on last year, this team really likes to take these injuries very seriously. They take a lot of precautions, even for small stuff, and that's what it sounds like the case is with Lad McConkey. And meanwhile, while Lad McConkey has been resting, due to that minor injury, we've been seeing some opportunities for other receivers. Now, other guys, I will say, Aronde Gadsden has been getting opportunity. He's been looking awesome. KLS has been shining. But I don't think there's a player more benefited from the time at playing receiver than Tre Harris at wide receiver 1 at this point. Now that he's had an opportunity to really connect with Justin Herbert and build that chemistry with him, we're starting to see that trust become built. And that's very important if you're a wide receiver for Justin Herbert, because Justin Herbert can be a very courageous quarterback, to say the least. He's not afraid of taking those shots. And if he feels confident that you give him a good chance at converting, he's going to be looking your way. And now that Tre Harris is potentially, the number 1 wide receiver in practice, they're able to start creating that connection together. And he honestly has been going off recently. He's been, Justin Herbert's in particular, third down guy. We've been looking for another guy. I mean, of course, Ladd McConkey, but we're Ladd McConkey aside, because he can't do it on his own, right? He can put up 200 yards and a bunch of touchdowns like he did versus the Texans, but that doesn't produce wins. That's what we're looking for, is another guy to help shoulder that load. And right now, it does look like another third down option is starting to become Tre Harris. He converted 3 third downs in practice yesterday. He's, again, gaining trust, maybe similar to Mike Williams a little bit as well. He's being thrown into coverage a little bit, which is honestly one of the traits that was attractive about Tre Harris when he came onto this team. Feels like, he stands a good chance at coming up with contested catches. And like we're seeing in this image here by Tarheeb Still, he knows how to catch the football, and he knows how to body himself out. It feels pretty good, man. And in those 3 plays, I'll kind of describe them real quick. One of them, the first one was definitely this one on Tarheeb Still. It was on a crossing route, deep crossing route. And he made that catch through contact, which, like we're seeing here, was very impressive. Later, he would convert another third down and yet another crossing route, this is going to be something you probably see him in a lot. On the outside, and these crossing routes, kind of definitely some of the stuff that you would see in Ole Miss, right? But one of the biggest things that you saw a lot at Ole Miss were these dig routes, right? One of his signature moves out there. He definitely had a nice wide open catch on one of those routes there. He looked really, really good. But finally, when he lined up against Nico Reed, he beat him on a 3rd and 5 back shoulder catch. Great adjustment. It was like veteran level catch by Tre Harris. And that's what you want to see from the 2nd round pick. Finally, we're starting to see the needle move in the right direction for Tre Harris and Justin Herbert. And they would connect 4 times on 5 targets. But more importantly, again, like I said, the reps are starting to translate to trust. You want Justin Herbert to trust this guy. This guy is a big playmaker. He's one of those big body receivers that can make a difference. In maybe some ways Mike Williams did, but with his own flair. And it's something that we really needed to see caught up on, seeing as he did miss a little bit of time. And he's been excited to play with Justin Herbert. In some of his interviews, he's been emphasizing how much he's trying to improvise with Justin Herbert. The improvisation is something that I think is very important to players like Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. Patrick Mahomes will be scrambling, looking for a guy to get open. No, you can't just be a receiver running a route and hoping the ball comes to you, and then that's it. You got to look around at your environment and see what the coverage looks like, see what your coverage looks like, see where your quarterback's watching and looking at. And it feels like that's why you see a lot of those crazy plays, come out of Kansas City, because Patrick Mahomes is really good at communicating that with his guys and ultimately making it happen. And it's really cool to see that, from a rookie being understood and emphasized in some of these interviews that he wants Justin Herbert to watch for him to get open, right? He observes Herbert watching him, and if he sees that maybe if he makes a move this way or that way, that the ball might come his way, that he's going to make it happen. And he likes that about Justin Herbert. He says he's got the courage to target him in tight windows. That's something that you're going to want to see, and that Herbert's ultimately been pretty good at in his career. So this time, as the Chargers wide receiver 1 in practice, could help shape his chemistry with Herbert going forward. It's really, really good to see, because I know a lot of people were a little worried after the Hall of Fame game. Maybe it didn't go the way everybody was hoping, but there's other things to get excited about, like KLS, who we'll talk about again here in just a second. Other thing that I wanted to talk about, which was solidified earlier today, I know that we've been seeing it at practice pretty consistently now, and it's something that Jim Harbaugh wanted to emphasize early. He did mention that he wanted a configuration of the offensive line to become somewhat permanent so they could really hone in on focus in on that on the later half of training camp. And it feels like they have found that. Earlier today, when I was doing some research for this video, it seems that he came out in an interview and said the starting five is looking like, from left to right, Rashawn Slater, or excuse me, from left to right, Rashawn Slater, Zion Johnson. Man, I'm throwing a brain fart out here. Excuse me. And then we got Bradley Bozeman at center, which I know is going to be probably the biggest one people are worried about. Mekhi Becton and Joe Alt. Okay, this is the configuration that a lot of us predicted at the top of the season. They were trying different configurations with Zion Johnson at center and Bozeman at guard. We've been hearing some pretty good things about Sawyer as well, but ultimately it felt like it was always going to circle back around to this, just because that's their natural position. They have the most reps there, the most polish. And it's kind of a big ask to ask an offensive lineman to change positions over the course of one offseason. There are exceptions, but it is rare. And unfortunately, this kind of feels like the direction that we're headed in once more. And the only reason I say unfortunately is because this is really hinging on the bet that Bradley Bozeman really finds a new version of himself this year. It was kind of a really bad season for him last season. Maybe playing next to, Mekhi Becton will change things up a little bit. Of course, when you play next to good talent, it does elevate yourself as well, make your life a little bit easier. But on the other side of him, Zion Johnson, we're also asking to have a big step up here this season. And outside of that, the depth, not necessarily my favorite. Of course, Sawyer, we've heard good things about. Trey Pipkins, decent swing tackle, but it feels like it's a bit more fragile than most other positions on the roster. I'm not talking in terms of player health. I'm talking in terms of if you got to swap a guy in or out, or the rotation or whatever, it's not going to be as smooth, considering maybe the depth isn't as good it is as most other positions on the roster. You guys take a look at depth all over the roster. It looks awesome. Outside, of course, of offensive line. Funny enough, defensive line looks a little bit better this season, but, we want to get those trenches nice and juiced up, and that's kind of what we were expecting when Jim Harbaugh came onto the scene. They're finding a lot of success. We're not going to, argue with him too much. He's winning football games, but we're hoping to see the offensive and defensive lines looked a little bit more beefy in the next season or two to come. All right, next up, I talked about the offensive line. Here comes the defensive line. Fortunately, we do have some really good news on the other side of the trenches. It's going to be Tre Harris. He's continuing to shine. There's a couple other guys that are looking pretty good as well. I know Jamari Caldwell has been making some nice plays. Of course, you have Tito Agbonia as well has been standing out. But most of all, I do think it has been Tre Harris who has been making a lot of plays in training camp. He's starting to look very physical, very, very consistent. And it's something that spells a lot of confidence in maybe what was a more shaky situation at the top of the season, with Poona Ford making his departure to the Rams. Having a nose tackle, a defensive tackle one, I guess, on the roster feels really good, right? And it feels like Tre Harris is definitely up to the challenge. He's been making plays. He's been getting to Hampton in the backfield. He's been pressuring the quarterback. It looks like we might have something here, which is definitely something that, I alluded to at the top of training camp. I was like, hey, watch out for this guy. What the Chargers did with Poona Ford, turning him into a really, turning back the clock and turning him into a very relevant football player again. I think we're about to see something similar with Tre Harris. Now let's get to some of the exciting stuff here, man. The wide receiver room looks reborn. This has been actually pretty crazy to watch. The Chargers had a really, really bad situation at wide receiver last year. The health was really bad. The depth was really bad. Anything outside of Ladd McConkey was very, very shaky. And it was really difficult for the Chargers to get anything going through the air, considering the weapons were not like they once were. Justin Herbert was used to Keenan Allen, again, who might be making his return, and Mike Williams and Josh Palmer. Now we're looking at, it was a completely different configuration. This season, we are seeing a huge burst of flash and talent all over the depth even of this wide receiver room. We already knew Ladd McConkey would be great. He's been looking fantastic at camp, right? But the other guys really are turning heads too. Of course, KLS, who probably became a much more known player after the Hall of Fame game, has been a shining star. He's had some huge plays downfield. He's looked really good in terms of catching and route running, everything. KLS has been awesome. We've also seen many highlights flowing from camp and the Hall of Fame game that particularly involve him. So we might actually have something, and Keandre Lambert-Smith as a wide receiver that gets, brought into the game plan a lot more week in and week out. Like I'm honestly starting to expect, a bit of a bump from what I initially said at the top of the season for KLS. I was thinking maybe 100 or 200 yards. They work him in on those deep plays every once in a while, but now you got to think about how they're going to be utilizing him. If he's really going to be that deep threat, with a crazy success rate in the deep part of the field, maybe he does see some pretty respectable stats in his rookie season as a 5th-round pick, which would be awesome. Other guys that we're seeing some nice plays from, Ladarius Davis is starting to look like something more than just a returner. Jalen Johnson has been looking really nice too. He caught a 55-yard touchdown in practice yesterday as well. Absolutely crazy. And then Norande Gadsden as well. He's continued to ascend. Not a wide receiver, but a receiving tight end who the Chargers desperately have needed for a long time. Herbert found him deep on a nice play. And it's something that you can honestly start to expect in camp quite consistently. Like, the consistency is starting to be created here. And that's where the question marks start coming up in the actual season, right? Like, okay, how much are we going to see Gadsden? How much are we going to see KLS? Is Ladarius Davis going to be written in? I think it's going to be very interesting of a season for the Chargers. I think a lot of people are going to get involved. A lot of players are going to be mixed in. And ultimately, it's something that I think is been proven to be well orchestrated with the Chargers coaching staff, in particular Jesse Minter. We can get that on offense as well. Bravo. I think we got ourselves a pretty well-rounded out team. One of the other wide receivers that I did not mention that had an absolute awesome weekend was Brendan Rice. Man, did this guy go off. He's second-year receiver. First year looked really up and down. When I was at training camp, I was at the first week of training camp. He looked pretty good, right? Then it comes to the preseason and some of his opportunities in the year, being elevated, did not look great. Okay, now coming into training camp this season, he's been looking pretty consistent, pretty solid. And in particular, this last practice, he caught 2 touchdowns in a very impressive manner. The first one was a 2nd and goal situation. Trey Lance would find him in this particular photo where he jumps pretty much over Dean Leonard and finds himself a touchdown on that, looks like the back corner fade. Like, it looks awesome. Awesome play, physical, exactly what you want to see from the wide receivers. And the second touchdown would come on a deep pass by DJU, a deep post, thrown in double coverage. Rice came down with it. Looks awesome. This is where, okay, what's the formula going to look like if especially we bring in Keenan Allen? Because you can only roster so many wide receivers. Let's say the Chargers roster 6 wide receivers, and it really does sound like Keenan Allen's on his way back to I almost said San Diego, to the Los Angeles Chargers. Let's go ahead and add him to the list here real quick. So you got Ladd McConkey, wide receiver 1. If Keenan's back, I would probably lump him into wide receiver 2 right away, just because you can't replicate the kind of chemistry, and maybe it takes a second for them to get their rhythm back, but it feels like that would be wide receiver 2. Wide receiver 3, Tre Harris. Let's say wide receiver 4, Quentin Johnston. Then Keandre Lambert-Smith at 5, and Ladarius Davis. That's already 6 wide receivers. And we're already talking, guys like Brendan Rice, guys like Luke Grimm. There's a whole bunch of, Jalen Johnson, a whole bunch of talent that looks really, really good. But ultimately, we can only come down to 6, which is pretty interesting. Given the Chargers wide receiver situation last season, how it was last year, and now what it looks like this year, it's pretty good eats. That's all I'm going to say. And then finally, the last couple of guys I want to talk about are on defense. The first one, hard to find images because he hasn't really been doing a whole lot so far, has been Kyle Canard. A lot of us had a lot of high hopes for him, considering his accolades in college, and now it feels like he's really struggling to find his footing in the pros. He's yet to flash, in my opinion, and with being mostly quiet in the Hall of Fame game, it doesn't help his case so far. And then meanwhile, some of his teammates, another guy that we saw in the Hall of Fame game quite a bit was Caleb Murphy, who's been looking quite good. He's starting to turn heads. I know Tremont Morris Brash is what I think had a sack in practice as well. He's been looking good. But Caleb Murphy's been turning enough heads where we're starting to think, are we gonna roster 5 edge brushers on the team this season? We don't know, because I really don't think you cut Kyle Canard. Absolutely not. But it's a little discouraging that we're not seeing the progression that we were hoping for. So hopefully he finds his rhythm, his pace, or whatever he needs, by the time the season rolls in, because I would assume that he would be, rotated in just like, Bud Dupree was last year, but we would like to start seeing some results. I think preseason is going to help him out quite a bit. We'll continue to monitor him. But finally, I think one of the biggest breakout players that a lot of us maybe didn't see coming was Nico Reed, which again, Nico Reed, it creates a similar situation with the cornerback room as it does with the wide receivers. Like there's a whole lot of talent out there that you would expect to be above him on the roster, right? Of course, you got Cam Hart and Tarheeb Still. You got Dante Jackson. You got Dean Leonard and Jasir Taylor. It's already 5 cornerbacks. Is Nico Reed going to edge in there? He would have to beat guys like Benjamin St. Juste. Other guys on the roster that Triquez Bridges, who's also been looking really good, even as a 7th rounder. But Nico Reed has really been turning heads. He had that incredible interception in the Hall of Fame game, and he's producing pretty much similar results in training camp as well. So Nico Reed, number 46, another one to keep an eye on. I know a lot of Oregon Duck fans would swear by him and say, yeah, man, this is definitely going to be the guy. Let's see if he can keep it up, man, because he's been looking really good in camp, and hopefully the Chargers, like we were seeing with the cornerback room being elevated last season, maybe they have another piece here in Nico Reed. Maybe hopefully the same thing happens with the wide receivers this next season, which would be awesome. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been The Director. Get ready. We got another game preview coming up this weekend. More to talk about on the rookies earlier in the week, too. And keep an eye out on, I'm going to throw this out there, I'm starting to make a transition into, not even a transition, more of like an addition to short form content as well. So we're putting out a whole bunch of shorts on TikTok, on Instagram, of course here on YouTube, but also we're doing a whole bunch of shorts in the same program on Bleacher Report. If you guys want to catch all of that content, there's going to be a lot flowing over the course of the season. It's going to be a good time. Definitely hit us up with a follow on all those platforms. And of course on Bleacher Report, you can find me in the Chargers section. All right. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been The Director. If you like what you saw here, hit us up with a like and sub on your way out. We'll see you next time. And as always, bolt up and stay frosty. Yeah, man. Give me some Omari Hampton news, man. I'm ready. I think we're all ready to see more Omari Hampton in the preseason as well.
Action!